So we're back at it, part two. We left off with Nazi Germany uh, taking over Austria in 1938 and invading an area known as the Sudetenland, threatening Czechoslovakia. An agreement will be signed known as the Munich Pact, in which Hitler promises not to take any more land. Well, we move on to our next slide, and the title of this is, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. Winston Churchill, who is a member of parliament at the time, refers to the Munich Pact as dishonorable appeasement, that we, in essence, were just simply pacifying an aggressor. We were negotiating with a terrorist, and that's one thing you just don't do, because then what it gets exposed are your pushing points, what you're willing to accept, what you're willing to deal with. And if a terrorist or an aggressor knows they can push you this far, the next time around they're going to try to push you a bit further and further and further, to try to test you and make a determination as to whether or not if you have the gall, the courage, the gumption to stand up and defend yourselves. Now, in this particular case, Hitler will invade the rest of Czechoslovakia in March of 1939. And so I'm going to underline that here. That's not necessarily a term you're going to need to be wary for, but I'm just making reference to the idea that Hitler has now violated the Munich Pact. What should Britain and France do? They should call him out. They decide to do nothing. They, in essence, kind of turn the other way. They're not looking anymore. And now Hitler feels like, well, I can do whatever I want. I told them I was going to do this. They said, don't do that, because if you do that, there will be some consequences. There obviously are no consequences. So then Hitler takes the rest of Czechoslovakia. And in that very same year, Hitler will claim that Germans living in Poland were being persecuted. The same logic he used for invading the Sudetenland, protecting Aryan peoples in Czechoslovakia, will be the reason why he will want to invade Poland. And he'll do just that. When Hitler invades Poland in 1939, this will mark the beginning of World War II. Germany is going to move into Poland. The Soviet Union is aware of what Germany's doing, and they do not want Hitler moving past Poland, because then that means that Germany would now be threatening the Soviet Union. So Stalin decides to meet Hitler halfway, and they come to an agreement, and they sign something known as a non-aggression pact. You don't have to underline it. I just want you to be aware that at the outset of this conflict, they weren't necessarily friends, but they weren't enemies either. They were willing to collaborate, so the Soviet Union could invade Poland from the east, Germany could invade Poland from the west, and they could split the spoils of war in that process. So World War II actually begins, and I want you guys to underline that, make sure you're well aware that World War II begins when Hitler invades Poland in 1939. The success of Hitler and his invasions will revolve around a military strategy known as Blitzkrieg. Please underline Blitzkrieg. This is massive. This is the German military strategy that enables them to be successful in steamrolling over many European nations in a matter of 2 years. When Hitler had invaded Poland, Britain and France told Germany that they are to withdraw their troops within a matter of 24 hours, and failure to do so will result in a world war. Britain and France will then declare war against Germany, and now it's official. We have World War II on our hands. It's 1939. It's taking place in Europe. Now, getting back to Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg, again, is a military strategy often referred to as lightning war, because what you do is you send everything that you got. You send your tanks, you send your troops, you send the Air Force, you send everything you got all at once. The idea is to overwhelm the enemy to the point that they make a mistake, and that mistake could be fatal. Now, in football, there's something referred to as a blitz. And the moment that the ball is snapped from the center to the quarterback now has the ball. The traditional form of a blitz is for every person on the defensive side of the ball. They are to attack the quarterback and overwhelm the quarterback, and they're all going at once. And in that process, the idea of a blitz is so that the quarterback either gets sacked, the quarterback hopefully will fumble the ball, and it could be recovered by the defense. There's a reason why you don't see every play resulting in a blitz, because there are some weaknesses to a blitz. The idea of a blitz is that you are using the element of surprise, quick action, and again, in an effort to overwhelm your enemy so that they make a mistake. But if you know that they're constantly going to be using the blitz, there are weaknesses in that if everybody is rushing towards the quarterback, if they are smart enough, they can maintain their composure, dump the ball off as quickly as possible to anybody that's open. And guess what? Everyone's open because no one's defending, because everybody is charging after the quarterback. Secondly, what it does is it allows for your defenses to be somewhat weak because you have most of, if not all of your resources on the front line engaging in that conflict or in the desire to blitz and sack the quarterback. So your defenses could be weak, and if you're quarterback and you stay calm and you dump the ball off slightly, before you know it, they are off to the races and they're going to have a touchdown because you failed to secure the back end of the field in football. Militarily, this is something that most nations prefer not to engage in, because a lot of times when you're sending your troops, you're sending your tanks, and then you send your air cover and they're dropping bombs, there's a chance they might kill their own men. This is the reason why most people don't engage in blitzkrieg. But if you're Adolf Hitler, if you're a psychopath, you can make the argument, well, in order to make this omelet, we're going to have to crack some eggs. These are the casualties of war. And this is the collateral damage of war. So, we're going to kill our men, but we're going to kill a lot of theirs too. And that's the attitude of Hitler. That's where his mind is at. In April of 1939, Hitler is going to invade Denmark, invade Norway. The very next month, he's going to invade the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. That same month, Germany, with the assistance of Italy, because now Italy realizes, whoa, Germany is making moves, and either we jump on board or we become the next target. Now, what's interesting is that, remember, Mussolini's a fascist, Hitler's a fascist. Hitler believes in the notion of a Holy Roman Empire, or he respects the Holy Roman Empire because those are Aryan peoples. And the idea of them linking up seemed reasonable. They will link up. They will have a joint plan of attack against France, and France will fall by 1940 in May. So, I'm sorry, in June. And I mean, the French lasted less than a month. That Blitzkrieg is incredibly successful. If you just look at, or if you were taking count, as I'm taking count, there are 10 pieces of territory that Hitler is going to seize within a matter of 2 years. Remember, he invaded Austria in 1938. At the end of 1940, in June, he has France. And in between that time, there will be 8 other pieces of territory that he's going to swallow up. And again, so we're going to look back at this map. This is a picture of cartoon of Mussolini and Adolf Hitler forcing Lady Liberty. This is the French version of Lady Liberty to surrender. And you can see Hitler went in this direction, boom, until they signed a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union here. And then so Hitler decides to come back in this direction, boom, and takes everything that he can. Again, there's no reason for him to venture down into Italy because they have an alliance of sorts. And you can see Italy will take the southern part of France. Germany's taking the northern part of France. Many people ask, well, why didn't they take next? Well, Spain is under the leadership of a fascist dictator as well, and they're currently going through a civil war. So as far as they were concerned, and when I say they, I'm talking about the Axis powers, or the dictators under the leadership of Mussolini and Hitler, they in essence tell Franco, the fascist leader of Spain, hey man, take care of your business at home, and when it's all said and done, we'll touch base later. What you should consider is, with Hitler not able to go east anymore, and with a limit going west on mainland Europe, the next goal for Hitler is going to be Great Britain, which is right here. And this will be known as the Battle of Britain. The Battle of Britain will be a bombing campaign. It will not be your traditional blitzkrieg movement by Nazi Germany because there's a small strip of water separating Great Britain from mainland Europe. We have to remember that Great Britain is an island. And because of that, that small strip of water and the resiliency of the British people are ultimately what will enable them to not defeat Hitler, but they definitely stand their ground. They hold the line. And with the utilization of new technology, such as radar, they're able to spot German planes and shoot them down before they cause catastrophic damage. Now, don't get me wrong, they're bombing major British cities day and night. And the destruction, as you can see from this picture here, is evident. I mean, the cities and towns are in shambles. But with the utilization of radar by the British Royal Air Force, that's what the RAF stands for, the Royal Air Force, the British are able to hold the line, and they're able to hold the line with the leadership of individuals like Winston Churchill. Go ahead and underline Winston Churchill. Just make sure that you know that he's the Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War II, and his leadership will enable Great Britain to hold the line and finally stop this military juggernaut known as Nazi Germany with the utilization of blitzkrieg. Now, where is America in all of this? Remember, America, we are focusing on the Great Depression. We're focusing on being neutral. We had signed documents known as the Neutrality Acts, which stated that we would not enter in any type of conflict in Europe. We were going to focus on ours, and they were going to focus on theirs. But after the, I wouldn't say failure, but again, the inability of Nazi Germany to seize Great Britain, Germany, Italy, and Japan will organize an alliance, and it's a mutual defense alliance called the Axis Powers. I want you guys to underline the Axis Powers. Please understand that this is an alliance of World War II, and it's supposedly a defense alliance. This is what's interesting is that, you know, they're the aggressor, and then they have the audacity to play this victim card and say that they need to be on the defensive now. Excuse me. So that's that situation. We now have a formed alliance in this conflict known as the Axis Powers. During World War I, they were referred to as the Central Powers, and we will have another alliance, the alliance made up of Great Britain and France, and that will be considered the Allied Powers, if you will. The United States is not involved in this conflict formally. However, we do have pieces of evidence to indicate that we were involved in this conflict with stuff like the Lend-Lease Act. I want you guys to underline that. And also underline the cash and carry policy. These two policies, these two acts, in essence, afforded us an opportunity to be involved in the conflict, despite the fact we said we weren't going to be in the conflict. It reeks of how we got involved in World War I. We are, in essence, following those same footsteps leading into World War II. Now, you can make an argument that, well, we learned from our mistakes. You know, last time we had 28 casualties on the British merchant ship called the Lusitania, and that's what that was phase 2 that got us involved in World War I, the use of unrestricted submarine warfare by the Germans. This time around, what we are doing is we are lending military aid to any country as long as you give it back. We were willing to give military assistance to Great Britain, China, and the Soviet Union. We said, hey, man, if you guys need these resources, you can have them. Just make sure you give them back. You know, here's a tank. Make sure you fill it up with gas when you bring it back. You know, that type of stuff. But we're not involved. But we kind of are involved. Secondly, we have something called the cash and carry policy. We were letting countries know, hey, we can give you whatever you want. What you need? You need food. You need liquor. What you need? You need socks. You need guns. You need tanks. You need planes. You can have it, but you got to pay cash, and you have to come and pick them up. And the reason for that is because we didn't want our ships in the open waters and subject to getting blown up again, and then that would drag us into the conflict. So it's a very interesting concept, this idea that we want them to only pay with cash. You got to think about businesses that only want to operate with cash only. These are your businesses that, like, maybe they don't want their numbers on the books, uh, and because they don't want people to know how much money they actually make, and therefore they can't tax them in that capacity. Uh, you'll never go to a drug dealer and he'll be like, hey, and you're trying to buy drugs from him, whatever, and he's like, oh, do you need a receipt with that? Here, go ahead and put it on your card. We'll just swipe it right here. With my card swipe. No problem, no problem. You need a gift receipt? Let me back that up for you. None of that. No, they deal in cash. Why? Because their product or their activity is illicit. It's illegal, and they don't want to get caught. And also another thing about drug dealers, a lot of times, um, the transfer of the product from my hand to your hand and you to give me cash. That's the actual crime in of itself. But if I just put the drugs on the ground, you put the money somewhere else, you come and happen to pick up the drugs, I happen to go and pick up that money. There's no commerce taking place there. I found this, you found that, I'm all good. And so this notion of the cash and carry policy is interesting because it's evident that we were involved in this conflict, despite the fact we were telling the world we don't want to be involved in this conflict. Another thing I want to point out is that we freeze the assets of Japan and we stop sending them oil. The Japanese were dependent upon American oil, and the Japanese had a great deal of assets in the United States. We say, we're shutting your account down. You can't have access to it. So these are like economic sanctions that we're placing upon Japan. We have to ask ourselves, why are we doing this to Japan? Well, Japan is now part of the Axis powers. They now want to be like Germany. They see that Germany is taking control of Europe. Japan wants to take control of all of Asia. And Japan will begin invading many parts of Asia, starting off with Indochina. Japan will invade Korea. Japan invades almost all of Asia because they want to be a superpower in Asia, the way that Germany is a superpower in Europe. So we're upset about the Japanese invading China because that's supposed to be our baby to invade. If you recall from the open door notes of 1901, how dare they step into an area that we're supposed to be controlling economically. So we're bothered by that. We freeze their assets. And you got to imagine Japan's going to retaliate. We just got to ask ourselves, is it going to be an economic retaliation? Will they freeze our assets? Will they stop sending us things? Or could they possibly attack us militarily? Time will tell. We'll see when we get there. And then Hitler invades the Soviet Union. Why? Because he's crazy. When you are on the move and you're a person that has to constantly be on the move, you'll start making decisions that become rash. And even though they had a non-aggression pact, you got to know Hitler doesn't abide by any type of pact. He does what he wants to do. He invades the Soviet Union, and this will be seen as a military blunder for him, considering the amount of lives that he's going to lose. It's going to be a futile effort, and most people that study military history will know the invasion uh, of the Soviet, or I should say Russian lands, is incredibly difficult. Nazi submarines, which are called U-boats, are still attacking ships, and they're attacking ships that are participating in the Lend-Lease Act, which would include American ships. FDR gives American warships permission to attack German U-boats only in self-defense. So, in essence, FDR is letting American ships and the American military know that if they hit you, you can hit them back. All the while that is taking place. Again, we're not getting involved. We're not getting involved. We're not getting involved. But we are involved. But we are involved. But we are involved. FDR is going to meet secretly with Winston Churchill, and they're going to sign something called the Atlantic Charter. This document outlines the goals of World War II and the formation of the Allied powers. But, ladies and gentlemen, we're still not at war yet. We don't want to be involved in the war, but it's very apparent that FDR is inching closer and closer to getting into the conflict. Winston Churchill is desperately asking for assistance, desperately seeking the involvement of the United States in this conflict to secure a victory in Europe. But we, as the American people, are just not there yet. We're only focused on ourselves. We are isolationists, and our major concern is the Great Depression. But the Atlantic Charter is evident that we had desires or designs to enter World War II. And when we go back on this slide, the Lend-Lease Act and the cash and carry policy, those are pieces of evidence to prove that we were involved, despite the fact that we said we were not going to be involved. So then we jump to 1941, December 7th. Japan is going to attack a U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Kamikaze pilots are given orders that they are to cause as much destruction and devastation as possible. They are to, after causing as much havoc and death as possible, if necessary, use their planes as instruments of war, as weapons of war, and fly them into any major installation, destroying as much as possible. When it's all said and done, 24,000 people are going to be killed with this attack. The question we need to ask ourselves is, why were the Japanese attacking us? It seemed like it was out of nowhere. You know, if you pay attention to what the radio was telling you at the time, what the government was telling you at the time, this was a dastardly attack, a fiendish attack, a terroristic attack by mad Japanese kamikaze pilots that were only bent on death and destruction. And the very next day, on December 8th, 1941, Roosevelt will address Congress asking them for a declaration of war against Japan, and that's exactly what happens. Franklin Delano Roosevelt will address the nation and refer to December 7th, 1941 as a date which will live in infamy. We will always remember Pearl Harbor as that moment, that catastrophic event, which resulted in the loss of American lives, catapulting us into World War II. Pearl Harbor is significant because we have now satisfied phase 2 for the United States to enter World War II. And we'll stop the lecture there.